14. On the subject of love. Positing and exploring the question of resisting evil is meaningful only on behalf of living good. For to find evil as such, to comprehend its quality and its nature, and to resist it, accepting the struggle with him while not accepting the evil itself, is precisely the task of the virtuous, open only to them who have exclusive access to the solutions. The struggle against evil led by an evil creature and coming from the will to evil and for the sake of evil is not resistance to evil, but service to it and the establishment of it. At the same time, it is possible, of course, that such an outcome might occur in which the clash of two malevolent forces exhausts one of them, or even both. According to Dostoevsky's expression, one reptile should devour another, and in this ingestion will find its own end. However, it is clear that neither of these malevolent forces resists evil as such, but creates its own distinct evil, and only the collision of their evil intentions and energies weakens and destroys the colliding opponents. It is also clear that such an outcome, while diluting the atmosphere of evil in the world, does not at all solve the problem of true resistance to evil, but only removes from consideration isolated situations and conflicts, the acuteness of which consists precisely in the fact that good is forced to fight evil on two fronts, by no means confusing its own interests with the interests of either evil opponent. That which resists evil itself is itself a living good. This means that the very resistance to evil stems from spiritual love. Through this it is realized, to this end it serves, from this it proceeds and is planted, grown, and strengthened. And for all of this, resistance does not stop short either before mental compulsion or physical compulsion and suppression. How is this possible? This is possible due to the fact that a beginning in the spirit indicates love for the object of resistance, and this origin restricts and modifies its appearance and manifestation. And before all else, it indicates its subject to the one who resists, imparting both devotion and strength. Love, taken by itself, independent of spirit, its subject, its purpose and its goal, is the beginning of blind passion. It combines the power of attraction with spiritual frailty, the legitimacy of instinct with spiritual happenstance, biologically sound accuracy with spiritual indiscrimination and acceptance. Love itself is thirst and hunger, but thirst and hunger do not in themselves provide for either the quality of drinking or the virtues of eating. Love is a certain openness of the soul, but an open soul can sometimes welcome in that which is unworthy of love. Love is attraction and power, but how often attraction is left to oblivion, and power is wasted or internally disintegrated in pursuit of a false goal. Love is acceptance, but not all that is pleasant is spiritually acceptable. Love is sympathy, but does everyone deserve it? Love is a kind of melodious singing from the depths, but the depth of an unspiritual instinct can be moved to temptation, and can sing from the enjoyment of sin. Love is the ability to unite with and identify with the beloved, but unity at the basis level drains and gradually extinguishes this very ability, and identification with evil can absorb and pervert the grace of love. Love is creativity, but does it make no difference what a creator does? Love without spirit does not see, and therefore becomes self-defeating. It does not take flight, but gropes its way along, wandering aimlessly and falling down. It does not sense correctly, and therefore weakens itself. First a vague, then an obvious sense of unworthiness sets in. It does not serve, but revels, does not construct, but dwindles. Its implementation marks not a revival, but a death. It does not catch light, but flares out and leaves nothing but smoke. That is why love without the spirit is blind, partial, self-serving, subject to vulgarization and ugliness. It is not good in and of itself, but only contains the possibility of good. This is not real value, but an unrealized force, not an achievement, but a deposit. Only the spirit, only the spiritual force in a person, whatever it may be called, spiritual taste, flair for perfection, divine vision, a God-loving mind, clarity. Only this power reveals to man a real, genuine, worthy object for his love, the object that itself is above the world, but which is hidden in nature, in things, and in people, and in human relations and creatures worthy of life, which are worth loving and for which it is therefore worthwhile to die. The soul which craves this object is not doomed to starvation. For this object the soul should be open. Attraction to it will not destroy the soul and will not squander its strength. Unity with it will give the soul righteousness, integrity, and tireless vigor in creativity and construction. Identification with it will give the soul's personality form, flight, and fire. The real achievement of a person begins when his passion clings to the divine object, or, otherwise, when a ray of the perfect permeates the human soul to the very bottom of its passionate sense. Then the human passion starts from the depths to shine through the divine rays penetrating it, and the man himself becomes part of the divine fire. But this occurs only insofar as man can truly comprehend and implement the two primary commandments of Christ about love in their mutual connection and coherence. Of these two commandments, the first directs one to love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength, while the second teaches to love your neighbor as yourself. Matthew 22:37-40, Mark 12:29-31, Luke 10:26-28. He who fulfills the first commandment is drawn to God with all the senses, with all his imagination, with all his thought and will, and, moreover, in whom all the powers of the personal soul become nourished and saturated with a love which is renewed in spiritual union with his whole being and vision, building upon the Son of God within himself. He will find that in turning to the world and people, he inevitably sees them in a new way and enters into a new relationship with them. This new vision and new attitude is determined by the fact that, having learned how to correctly feel, imagine, think, and desire the divine, in the implementation of the first commandment, he then finds for the first time, in the world and in people, that spiritual, divine composition, which in God and through God shows him his neighbor, and awakens in his soul a true spiritual love for him. The fulfillment of the first commandment reveals God to man, and in general opens up his spiritual eye to him. This is why the fulfillment of the second commandment is impossible outside the first and apart from the first. What it means to love my neighbor as myself is not to love the earthly, zoological composition of man, with all his biological health, with all his earthly needs and pleasures, with all his aspiring complacency, but instead the ray of God in another's soul, a spark of the divine fire, a spiritual personality, the Son of God. The true brotherhood of men is revealed only through God. People are brothers only insofar as they are children of God. And what is impossible for man due to his animal instinct, to love another as himself, becomes not only possible, but necessary and inevitable for him as a spiritual being, who has renewed his vision and his earthly perceptions in light of a full love of God. For he who has learned to see and love the divine whole will need to love this divine wherever he sees and finds him. Moreover, he will always look for him in others, feeling himself connected primarily with him, and only through him and in him with all people. Only one who has found and established in himself the Son of God can love his neighbor as himself, for only he knows what the divine is and what it means to be in union with him, that is, what it means to be the Son of God. Only through this can he see the Son of God in his neighbor, and seeing him in them, he cannot help but love them, to love their spirit, their fire, their altar, their temple, just as much as he loves his own divine, his personal temple, his altar, and his fire. All this can be expressed in the following formula. A genuine attitude towards God precedes the establishment of true love for one's neighbor, for to love one's neighbor means to love in him the beginning of the divine, the beginning of the living good. The love of God reveals to man a new dimension of things and people. According to this dimension, man is more than this single animated animal, than this single subject. There is more in him than he himself in all his subjectivity. And this is something more. His supersubjectivity, in spite of his subjectivity, is found in his spirit, his primary component, the real he himself. True love is the connection of one spirit with another, and then as an extension of this, everything else. The connection of the soul with the soul and the body with the body, but it is not only the connection of souls and bodies, but the spiritual connection of spiritual souls and the spirit of sanctified bodies. True love binds the lover not to all that exists and lives, without distinction, but only with the divine in everything that exists and lives, with spark, with ray, with prototype and image. This is not blind passion, but a passion which sees, and its movements are neither accidental, indiscriminate, nor helpless. It enters into union and identification only with the living good, and this unity is unconditional, in this life as in death. It does not unite with any sorts of evil, but departs from it and opposes itself to it, and this opposition is also unconditional, in life as in death. The beginning of the Spirit is the beginning of a substantive choice and a religious devotion, and this spiritual force of religious devotion, which has chosen the divine and clings to Him, inspires a spiritual love in one's attitude to everything, to God, to the Church, to the homeland, to the Tsar, to his people, to his material and personal altars, to his family, and to his neighbor. Such love rebuilds in the soul an entire worldview in the relations which pertain to all the value in the world. Due to this, all dimensions are now considered in a new and different way, and everything is henceforth determined by divinity and His sanctifying presence. Thus, the typical, religiously blind opinion believes that the useful is above the sacred, that a man is above a thing, and that many people are above one person. It is convinced that all men are equal, that every person has the right to life, and that the last word always belongs to humanity. It believes that the most terrible eventualities are hunger and suffering, and that on earth the objective good is found in greater satisfaction and more happy people. It does not doubt that health is better than sickness, that power is better than submission, that wealth is better than poverty, and that life is always better than death. However, one who embodies spiritual love sees and regards all of these things completely differently. For him, the sacred is always above the useful, earthly harm is not certain to be terrible, and human benefit is not always attractive. He knows things that are higher than a person, and at one great moment in human history, the first bearer of this love expelled the trading vulgarity from the material temple. In his eyes, many people as such can neither conjure up nor replace the true quality of one person, so that one is as 10,000 to me, if he be the best. Spiritual love knows that people are not equal and that they are differentiated from each other as star differs from star. 1 Corinthians 12, 5-12, 15, 39-41. It also knows that every man must earn and justify his right to life, that there are people who are better off not having been born, and there are others who are better off being killed than allowed to do evil. Matthew 18:6, Mark 9:42, Luke 17:1-2. Spiritual love, knowing the source of a true, God-centered love of humanity, knows the price and temptations of sentimental humanity, and does not indulge in it. It understands the religious meaning of suffering and the spiritually cathartic power of fasting, and always envisions something much more terrible than suffering and hunger. It does not measure the improvement of human life by the contentment of individual people or the happiness of the human mass. It knows all the spiritual dangers associated with the availability of earthly pleasure, and all the spiritual significance of forfeiture. Its vision has long revealed to it why illness may be better than health, submission may be better than power, poverty may be better than wealth. And it is the power of this vision that strengthened many in the conviction that noble death is always better than shameful life, and that each person defines himself in the face of God precisely at the moment in which he voluntarily chooses death. In this sense, the beginnings of spirit, pointing out the truly worthy object of love, alter its fundamental direction at the root, as well as its substance. Behind former names and guises, new, different objects and states begin to be understood, and these new objects require a new attitude from the soul. They demand and receive it. And as a result of this, the very act of love is inevitably reborn in its basic psycho-spiritual structure. It acquires new limits, new forms, and manifestations.